It's -30 out there today, so I'm going to work on something indoors instead. So I turned to one of my favorite pages on the wiki, a list of sentient species from around the Warhammer 40k universe, and there are a lot. I've spent hours working my way through this list, and most of the entries have little to no information or physical descriptions, and even when they do, they're very vague. When I was first interested in Warhammer 40k, the Tau really stood out to me, not because of their giant mech suits, but because of the Kroot. Alongside the Vespids, the Kroot were mentioned as one of the many auxiliary species that made up the Tau Empire. I was always a little disappointed that Games Workshop preferred the Tau as high-tech kind of mech suits as to a coalition force of a bunch of different alien species. I think that could have been a lot of fun to model. There's a lot of debate among fans online as to whether the Tau truly are the good guy space communists, or if they're psychically coercing these species into subservience. But there's no way I'm diving into that Vespid nest, so let's get to the build. I started by going to my local game store that sells used Warhammer, and found a bunch of these old lizard men. And a bag of Tau bits, for a total of about $20. Referring back to the list, I found a species that I kind of thought fit the look of these lizard men, the Anthrazods, who are described as a sturdy but dim-witted race who is well suited for asteroid mining. With no physical description, I thought these models suited a dim-witted and sturdy look. I started by cutting off the tails as well as the clubs that are attached to their belts. The plastic was quite thick, so it took a bit of hacking with a pair of snippers. Then I scraped the back of the model's calf with an X-Acto blade to smooth it out, and took off any marks from the sprues on the Tau bits. I cut down the guard on one of the rifles so that it would fit over the clenched fist of the left hand of the lizard man. Admittedly, this is kind of lazy, but I wanted to get this done in an afternoon. Next, I shaved down the wattle underneath the lizard man's head. I glued the weapon a little lower than what would look natural because I knew the big shoulder pads would cover up that large gap. I think Games Workshop's reliance on pauldrons and large shoulder pads is pretty genius for putting together models. They cover seams really well. And that's the first one down. It's a pretty entry-level arm swap, all things considered. Included in that bag of Tau bits were a couple pairs of legs, and they were about the same size as the lizard man's, so I started chopping them up with my X-Acto knife at the ankles. And a bit more carnage with the snippers. A bit more trimming with an X-Acto knife was needed to make the seam look natural. Another ankle cut with the X-Acto knife, this time on the Tau legs. And some super glue to hold them in place. The result was about the same height as one of the standard lizard men, and I filled the transition with some epoxy sculpt. On other models, I covered up the carnage left by the clippers with a pouch. Pouches and bags are really handy for covering up seams, and I think they also really sell the alien species as being sentient. Heck, I think even a Tyrannid in a pair of cargo pants would look downright civilized. Next, I reused some old bases by just covering them in superglue and dipping them in kitty litter. This made a really quick and easy, kind of lunar, craggy base. Once that was dried, I saturated the bases a little more with superglue and stuck down the feet of my Anthrazods. I used what I had, so each one is kind of unique. This also gives them a bit more of a ragtag appearance. In my head, I thought maybe these models could be the remnants of a mining colony that had to take up arms to defend themselves from some threat. In the end, I'm quite pleased by how these turned out. It kind of went exactly as I had hoped. They're a little dirty and a little quick, but I wanted to get this done in an afternoon. And here they are painted. This was the first time I had tried using an oil wash. The grime kind of helped cover up some of the yellow. Painting yellow, that just really sucked. I never really done that before. I'm noticing all the mistakes as I'm editing this, and I think I might touch some of these up a bit later. I'll be making more metal models once the weather turns a bit nicer and I can work outside, but exploring these kind of unknown races of the Warhammer 40k world has been a nice little winter project. But I can't wait to get back outside and welding. Check out my channel for some of the other projects that I've done, and don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned.